Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to this December 31st, 2014 edition of Nightcast. As the world looks for a new century, or a new year, I should say, 2015, hundreds of people have attended a vigil in the Indonesian city of Surabaya to remember those killed on flight AirAsia QZ8501. The Airbus A320-200 carrying 162 people from Surabaya to Singapore disappeared on Sunday, and remains were located in the sea yesterday. Rupert Wingfield Hayes has tonight's opening report on this.
Around the world tonight, millions of people are welcoming in the new year with street parties and fireworks. Normally, they'd be doing that here in Surabaya too. Instead, everything is now overshadowed by the plane lying somewhere at the bottom of the Java Sea, and the 155 Indonesians on board, most of whom came from this city. There's another reason why this story seems to touch us all, and that's because the people who got on that AirAsia flight from here on Sunday morning were doing something incredibly common, something that we all now virtually take for granted. They were getting on a plane with their families and going off on holiday. When we do that, none of us think, and certainly none of them would have thought, that the plane could simply drop out of the sky from 35,000 feet. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News in Surabaya.
Okay, friends, and we're having a little problem with some of our controls tonight. Okay, looks like we're recovering okay with that. The first two bodies from the AirAsia flight QZ8501 crash have arrived back in Indonesia, the Indonesian city of Surabaya. Next of kin have been asked for DNA samples to help identify the victims. The Airbus A320-200 carrying 162 people, and friends, most of the reports have said 162. There was one report last night that was saying 172, but apparently perhaps that was a mistype by someone in the news agency, because all of the other reports are saying 162, including those reports from today's news, that the 162 people that were flying the plane from Surabaya to Singapore disappeared on Sunday, and the remains were located in the sea on Tuesday, yesterday. Now, turning elsewhere for news from today, friends, temporary shelters are overflowing in Malaysia after the worst floods for 30 years forced tens of thousands of people to evacuate their homes. Forecasters say there's more rain to come, and conditions could deteriorate even further by the weekend. Jennifer Pack reports from Kuala Krai in Kelantan State.
For 8 days, these streets were cut off from the outside world. Latarig village is built next to a waterfall. Heavy rain flooded the river, and within hours, the whole area was submerged underwater. This used to be a Muslim prayer hall, but the flood current was so strong that it lifted the entire structure and shifted it some 30 meters away to land on top of here on what used to be someone else's kitchen. Villagers are eager to clean up. The stronger men have to scrape the thick mud off the floors. 12 people share this two-story home. What they can salvage now fits into a tiny room.
It's very sad. This is the most severe flood I've seen. The water came in so fast. We've had floods before, but they hardly ever flooded the house. This time my family had to run up to the second floor, but it still wasn't safe. The water just kept rising. Rescue boats had to come and take us to the school for shelter.
Not everyone feels the government acted quickly enough. Here, Prime Minister Najib Razak is assessing the damages at the main hospital in Kuala Krai. But earlier, he was criticized for golfing with the U.S. president when the town was running low on food supplies. There were reports of desperate people stealing. Today, the water has drained, but there is still no electricity. Officials have defended the rescue effort. They have pledged more money to help victims. Government aid is getting out, but this is the first time Berchasalak village has seen food arrive in more than a week, and it is not enough. Local officials have to make smaller portions to stretch supplies. Back at Latarek village, rain starts to fall again. Residents have been told to prepare themselves for more flooding, but some villagers feel they've already lost everything. Jennifer Pak, BBC News, in Kuala Krai, Kelantan State.
Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny and more than 100 other demonstrators have been arrested at a rally being held last night in central Moscow, activists say. Navalny had urged protesters to gather in Manet Square near the Kremlin after his brother was sentenced to jail. Steve Rosenberg reports.
Could this be the man Vladimir Putin fears most? Alexei Navalny is an activist who says he's uncovered corruption at the heart of Russian power. He's also one of President Putin's most charismatic critics. In court today, he and his brother Oleg were found guilty of embezzlement. But while Alexei's sentence was suspended, his brother was sent to prison. Why are you jailing him? Alexei shouted at the judge. Are you doing that to punish me? Alexei Navalny may have escaped jail because the authorities don't want to turn a potential rival into a martyr. But he believes his brother is now being held hostage to put pressure on him. Outside the court, he called his supporters onto the streets. And they came. Tonight, hundreds risked arrest to take part in an unsanctioned protest right by the Kremlin. They condemned the Navalny trial as politically motivated, and they demanded change.
It's bitterly cold in Moscow tonight. It's minus 16 degrees centigrade. But anti-government protesters have come down to the square. They're shouting, "We are the power here," and freedom to political prisoners.
But gate-crashing the protest were some of Vladimir Putin's fans. This woman accused the crowd of wanting a Ukrainian-style revolution in Russia. The message didn't go down well. One man who didn't make it to the rally was Alexei Navalny. Along the way, he was detained by police and taken home. Since February, Navalny has been under house arrest. Soon after, the riot police moved in to push the protesters away from the Kremlin. But with Russia entering recession and social and economic problems building, it's likely there'll be more protests here in the new year. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Well, friends, as we're doing our live broadcast tonight, I'm outside the studio. I'm hearing the loud sounds of fireworks going off already. I guess people in where I am in Alabama, they love any excuse at all for fireworks. And it's 4 hours yet before midnight, or just a little bit less than 4 hours, but almost 4 hours before midnight. Next story, our next to last story tonight, probably one of the most important stories of the evening in many respects. Mahmoud Abbas has signed some 20 international treaties at the meeting in Ramallah, is the caption with this photograph that is the opening photograph for this news story. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has signed papers to join the International Criminal Court, ICC. He signed the Rome Statute, the ICC's founding treaty, at a Ramallah meeting. Membership could see the Palestinians pursue Israel on war crime charges, and the move was quickly condemned by Israel's prime minister. It follows the rejection of a UN Security Council resolution demanding an end to the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories by late 2017. 8 members of the 15-strong Security Council voted for that resolution, while the U.S. and Australia voted against it. The resolution, condemned by Israel as a gimmick, needed the support of at least 9 members in order to pass. 8 members did vote for it. The Rome Statute was among some 20 international agreements signed by Mr. Abbas at the meeting in Ramallah in the West Bank. Signing up to the statute is seen as the first move to joining the ICC. We want to complain. There's aggression against us, against our land, Mr. Abbas was quoted as saying. Actually, the aggression really is the descendants of Ishmael wanting to exercise the Hamas charter provision to destroy Israel. But Mr. Abbas says the Security Council disappointed us. And the caption with this next photograph, friends, reads, Palestinians warm themselves by a fire near the ruins of houses which witnesses said were destroyed by Israeli shelling during the most recent conflict between Israel and Hamas. I don't know how relative that photograph is to this story. It kind of puts a certain little punch into the story emotionally. But the BBC story continues by saying Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded quickly, saying Israel would take steps in response and defend Israel's soldiers. Israel, which is not a member of the ICC and does not recognize its jurisdiction, says joining the court would expose the Palestinians to prosecution. It is the Palestinian Authority, which is in a unity government with Hamas and an avowed terrorist organization that, like ISIS, like IS, the Islamic State militants, terrorist, perpetrates war crimes. That needs to be concerned about the International Criminal Court in The Hague, Mr. Netanyahu said in a statement. The U.S. State Department released a statement condemning what it called an escalatory step on the part of the Palestinians, saying negotiations between the two sides were the only, quote, realistic path towards peace. And friends, as I commented last night, even that logically by a government of this world seen as a realistic path really flies in the face of history that goes back 3,500 years to the time of Abraham and Sarah, and Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian handmaid, when Sarah told Abraham, hey, bear a child by my Egyptian handmaid Hagar, and she'll bear it on my knees, and that'll be as if it were, honey, Abraham, your child and mine. And once the child was born, little Ishmael, he became a thorn in the flesh for Sarah because Hagar, Ishmael's natural mother, acted like a natural mother would act. That's my son. And in many ways, it's understandable. It's laughable in a way. I mean, Sarah laughed when God told her that she would bear a child. At 90 years old, he told her she would be bearing a child. Well, time goes by, she doesn't bear a child. And when God told her, she laughed, thinking that's impossible, And then God even confronted Sarah about that and said, "You laughed." And she said, "Oh no, I didn't laugh." He said, "Oh, you did. You laughed." God said. He knew, he chided, he played with her a little bit on that. So she didn't really believe it at first, and as time went by, she showed she didn't believe it when she suggested to Abraham that she bear that child God promised through her Egyptian handmaid Hagar. And once Ishmael was born, now there came a point where the animosity became so great that Abraham had asked God, "Hey, what do I do?" And God told Abraham, "Yield to Sarah. Whatever Sarah tells you, do that with regard to Hagar." And so when Abraham talked to Sarah about it, Sarah said, "Hagar and that boy Ishmael, go." And so Abraham, as God instructed him, kissed Hagar goodbye, told her toodaloo, so long. And on the way, as they nearly died of starvation, but God provided water, and he heard their prayers, and he told Hagar that her son Ishmael would become the father of 12 great chiefs or dukes over a people that would be born of Ishmael, who would be a thorn in the side of the rest of his brethren. And sure enough, and he is a step-brother to the descendants of Isaac. So this includes Judah, the tribe of Judah, who's now in Israel being called the Israelites, but there's more to Israel than just the Jews in the Middle East. Along with Levi and Benjamin, who may be there with them. There's the sons of Isaac and the sons of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, his 12 sons, all over the world, and the two sons of Joseph in the most predominant places in the world, the son of Joseph, Manasseh, in the United States, and the son of Joseph, Ephraim, in the United Kingdom. And those are descendants of Isaac. Those are the stepbrothers of the descendants of Ishmael. And in one way you could, we're cousins. The Palestinians are cousins of the Israelites over there. I say cousins because instead of just being stepbrothers, since Isaac had a son named Jacob who had 12 sons who become the 12 tribes, and all of the descendants, we're stepbrothers, cousins, however you want to call it. We are related. The Palestinians and Israel are related. Same father, Abraham. This news story goes on and says, today's action, now we're backing up. Who are we quoting here? Let me see. Let me tell you this again. The United States Department released a statement condemning what it called an escalatory step on the part of the Palestinians, saying negotiations between the two sides were the only realistic path, quote unquote. Now that's the U.S. State Department making that statement, not me at all. The only realistic path towards peace, although there's some logic and wisdom of a sort to that. That's true. You're not going to force that peace on them, and frankly, they're never going to negotiate it, not with the animosity that Ishmael has toward Isaac and the descendants of Isaac. They want them, Ishmael wants Isaac's descendants dead, wiped off the earth, destroyed. So any movement, anything that moves toward that goal, they'll take it if you give it to them. Today's action is entirely counterproductive and does nothing to further the aspirations of the Palestinian people for a sovereign and independent state, the statement by the United States State Department said. Palestinian chances of joining the ICC were improved in 2012 after the UN General Assembly voted to upgrade their status to that of a non-member observer state. It did that in November of 2012. Membership is not guaranteed, but correspondents say the application is a highly political move that carries great symbolism. Now here's an analysis by Quentin Somerville, the BBC News Jerusalem journalist. Less than 24 hours, he says, less than 24 hours after the Palestinian Authority failed to bring about a UN vote to end the Palestinian occupation, President Mahmoud Abbas has made good on his promise of a different approach, joining the International Criminal Court and threatening Israel with charges of war crimes. Instead of negotiating his way to statehood, he hopes that pressure from international bodies will bring it about. It's been a bloody year for Palestinians and Israelis. The war in Gaza, kidnappings, murders in Jerusalem. There's little hope of peace. Internationally, there is a growing sense of frustration that bilateral talks have made little progress. The last attempt at peace negotiations, led by the United States Secretary of State John Kerry, collapsed earlier this year, having achieved almost nothing. Now, that's the end of the analysis by Quentin Somerville. The rest of the BBC News story says Mr. Abbas had been under increasing domestic pressure following months of heightened tension and violence after the collapse of peace talks in April. More than 2,100 people, mostly Palestinians, died in a 50-day conflict between Israel and Hamas in the summer, according to UN figures. Israel said 67 of its troops and 6 civilians died. Analysts say signing the Rome Statute could stir up tensions with the U.S. and other major donors to the Palestinian Authority, as well as a response from Israel. Based in The Hague, the ICC can prosecute individuals accused of genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes committed since July 1st, 2002, when the Rome Statute came into force. Earlier this year, Mr. Abbas signed applications by the State of Palestine to join 15 UN treaties and conventions, beginning with the Fourth Geneva Convention. Shanghai. Okay, news related, our next story related to events of the day as people celebrate the going out of the Roman year 2014 and the coming in of 2015 on the Roman calendar system. Shanghai, there was a big crush in their New Year celebrations that killed 35 people so far. As Ben Bland reports, families are gathering at hospitals to try and find news of loved ones.
Shanghai's New Year event, but what should have been a night of celebration, took a tragic turn. A stampede left at least 35 people dead and more than 40 others injured. Their relatives starting the new year in hospitals, distressed and anxious, waiting for news about their loved ones.
Now I just want to know what's going on inside the hospital. Many relatives had asked to go inside and ask the hospital to give us a list of the injured, including the conscious and unconscious ones, but nobody got back to us.
Shanghai is the biggest city in China by population, with 24 million current residents. Thousands had crammed into the Bund area on the waterfront for the New Year countdown. This footage from Chinese television shows damage caused by the crush. It's not clear what caused the crowd to surge as it did. The authorities say a full investigation will now take place. Ben Bland, BBC News.
And friends, that's it for this Wednesday night report. God willing, and the creek don't rise. We'll be back again Thursday night with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy. Tomorrow night will be a day that the world is celebrating as a new year in the middle of dead, cold winter. On God's calendar, we put both dates on the lower third down here. On the far side is the Roman calendar date, and to the left of that on the screen as you look at it is the Hebrew calendar date from God's holy sacred calendar. And we're a couple of months before the end of the year as God considers the year. The new year, the way God does it, begins at the beginning of the spring, when everything starts to bloom and blossom and the birds start to sing and return from their migrations. That's the real beginning of a year. And when Jesus Christ returns, this Roman calendar, along with all the governments of this world, will be a thing of the past. So, for those of you wanting to celebrate a new year tonight, it's not really a new year yet. We got a couple of months to go. A good couple of months and some weeks to go before the real new year that will be the system of the future begins. Well, thanks for joining me tonight, friends. Again, like I said, God willing, Creek Don't Rise. We'll be back again tomorrow night, Thursday night. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.